What it is, y'all? We on number 4 of the Monty Mentality podcast. Quadruple, back to back to back to back. Something like that. But yeah, as usual, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell button so you know when these come out. We're gonna try to get on a consistent cadence, but we'll get to that. Um, gonna talk about the topics for today as we go through. We're going to go over the NBA playoffs. As you guys know, we're out of the second round now. We're going into the conference finals, so we'll get into that. Also, we are going to have a Jayden Daniels discussion and why I'm not super excited like my fellow Commander fans are. So stay tuned for that. And also, we're going to talk about y'all summer bodies, how that's going. And perhaps your fitness goals might be realistic, just not the timeline in which you wish to achieve it. And then our Montyism of the day. What's that's going to be about? Well, you have to either click the timestamp or just watch through the whole thing if you want. But all right, let's just get right into it. About the NBA playoffs, we are in round 3 now, the conference finals, and we're going to recap the West first, at least the second round of the West. As we know, Minnesota and Anthony Edwards overcame the reigning champions. The biggest Game 7 comeback in NBA history, down 20. They came all the way back, 20 in the third quarter, mind you. That was a crazy game right there. Ant-Man, granted, it wasn't Ant-Man's best offensive game, but the Minnesota defense, they really just locked everything in. And Ant was a big part of that with his work on Jamal Murray, but also shout out to Rudy Gobert. I know everyone dislikes him, and a lot of you think he shouldn't have gotten Defensive Player of the Year, but he was really the MVP of last night. The way he just shut off the rim, and he also had some key offensive moments, including that crazy fadeaway. So yeah, that was a really good thing for the Timberwolves. So this is only their second conference finals ever. So I'm sure that's exciting. I know a lot of people are excited for Ant. So we'll see what he's got. And then of course with the Nuggets, the champs going down, basically they were a lesser version of what they were last year without Bruce Brown, without Jeff Green, because they couldn't pay Bruce Brown. They didn't want to go deeper into the tax with Jeff Green, and so basically they brought a lesser version of themselves, and that was not enough. Jokic and Murray ran out of gas. Jokic was just getting bullied on the boards because they just weren't moving to the ball, including him. And so it happens. I think Jokic is still the best player in the league. When I redo my top 10, he will be number 1 going away, but wasn't his brightest moment to be a part of that. So yeah, that happens. Also, craziest stat. The Nuggets that were not named Nikola Jokic or Jamal Murray, I believe they only scored 21 points total between the whole roster. Probably not gonna get it done, guys. Probably not gonna get it done. So Denver's gonna need to retool. That'll be interesting to see how they do that. And then in the other Western Conference series, we have the young Oklahoma City Thunder going down to the Slovenian god Luka Doncic and Hotep Jesus Kyrie, who the two of them actually didn't even have that good of a series. Shea was easily the best player in that series. He had to do everything for OKC. But I still think Luka's a better player when he's fully healthy because, as we know, Luka's knee is not right. But he did obviously do enough, and Dallas is very well coached, very disciplined. They don't make a lot of mistakes, unlike the Thunder, who are still figuring out playoff intensity. They have to play harder. That's a big part of it. They also have to be more willing to take what the defense gives them, any type of a closeout, and they were spooked to shoot threes. And they need to get better at that, and they probably need another big piece, whether that be somebody like a marketing or a wing or something. But I don't think the way that they are now internal development is going to be enough. It might be. It might be. But they're probably going to have to use all those gajillion draft picks that Sam Presti hoarded to find something. Also, they're definitely trading Giddy, but we'll see where that ends up. Yeah, they still need to learn that. And then East playoff recap. That's just not. It was trash. I mean, the Knicks basically were zombies by the end of the series. OG Anunoby tried to go out there, couldn't move. Who was not on the injury report for the New York Knicks? And the Pacers, they're just not. Even with light skinned Jesus, who did have enough great games, they're just not that good. But somebody's got to get to the conference finals, right? And like I said, Brunson was spent. Whole Knicks on the injury report. So then we get to the Celtics and Cavs. Yeah. The less said about that series, the better. So now we get the first series in the East for the Celtics where they're actually playing a team that's healthy and has their best player and is not missing any key starters. Obviously the Heat were missing Jimmy, and the darn it, just remember Cleveland. Cleveland was missing their second best player in Jared Allen, and obviously Mitchell missed the last two games. So now the Boston has to play a real team, and they're not even fully healthy because they still don't have Porzingis back yet, and he's not going to be healthy when the series starts. So the question for that series is, we know Boston sweeps nobody, so we know it's probably gonna go at least 5. But can Indy push it to 6, 7, maybe even threaten to win the series? I don't think they're gonna threaten to win, but can they get 2? I'm gonna say right now the Indiana Pacers will win 2 games in this series. That's right. Bold prediction. Book it. Put your student loans on it, or mine, and you can pay mine off. And then we have the Western Conference Finals. Now, one of the big keys to this series, to me, Luka is very clearly the best player in this series. I know a lot of people love Ant, but Luka is still clearly better than him. But will he be better in this series given, the knee issue, and given that, Minnesota's defense, this might be the best defense we've seen in the playoffs in some time. Some defenses you might think of is Boston 2 years ago when they had Rob Williams, Milwaukee in 21, with obviously Giannis and Brooke and Drew. Middleton was still all right on that end. Obviously the Lakers in the bubble with AD. They had the bigs, but also you had Bron, Trine, and then you had Caruso and KCP and Danny Green. Like, yeah. And then, of course, Toronto in 2019 with Kawhi. But really, Ibaka and Gasol, Siakam, Lowry just had basically no weak links in the chain. Flair Van Vliet off the bench, no weak links. So we've seen some great defenses, but Minnesota might be up there for what we've seen recently. And that's the key to their surgence into the West Finals now. But Luka and Kyrie do present a different challenge than what the Nuggets did. Obviously, Ant did a really good job on Murray for a lot of series, though we know Murray wasn't 100%. But then again, neither is Luka. But I don't think Ant's going to take Luka. In fact, Ant already said he's taking Kyrie, which I figured he would. That's more up his alley than a Luka. And as well as Jaden McDaniels will probably take the Luka matchup to start. I think if Luka's healthy, Minnesota will have a lot of problems with him. But to me, Kyrie is the real key. Can Kyrie get loose? Because, like I said, Kyrie's been very up and down all playoffs. That's going to be very important if Dallas is going to be able to score consistently. And obviously, they're going to need to keep getting things from PJ Washington. He was very key against Oklahoma City. So they need that to continue. But the thing I'm really interested in is the other end of the floor, where is Minnesota going to be able to score consistently on Dallas? Because Dallas is not, they're going to make you beat them. They're not going to make mistakes. And so, another thing that Dallas has that Denver does not, Dallas has actual rim protection. And so, one big reason why Ant had such a, I don't want to say easy time, but a good time with Denver for a lot of that series is, he's was in fuego for a lot of time where he can't miss a jumper, but then on top of that, he could get to the basket and no one would challenge him. Won't be the case with Dallas with Gafford and Lively. Especially, it's very impressed with them and how Dallas's coaching staff has coached them up to be the reliable rim protectors that they are. And like I said, Dallas does really good at getting back in transitions. So Minnesota's going to have to actually beat these guys. And I think one of the big keys I'm looking at is Cat. And is Dallas going to be able to get away with playing smaller guys on him? Or is he going to punish those matchups? He was able to punish those matchups against the Nuggets enough to get them through. He's going to have to do that again because, like I said, I think Dallas is going to be a bit more of a challenge on that end of the floor than Denver was just because of the matchup. But, I mean, that's the key to the series to me. But my prediction for that, I'm actually going to say that Minnesota will win it in 7. Obviously, everyone's going to be on the Wolves. I do think Dallas has a better chance than a lot of people are going to give them. I think people are already punching that Minnesota-Boston finals. I'm not punching that ticket yet. I think Dallas has a real chance. I'm picking the Wolves, yes. But I do think Dallas has a real shot here, and I can't wait to see how that plays out. Now, transitioning from basketball. This is going to be a little hard for me to get through, but y'all got to bear with me here. As you see, I got on my Commanders hat today. If you follow me, I don't really talk about the Commanders too much. That could change now with the new ownership. And I was excited about that. I was praying on Dan Snyder's downfall for the last 22 years. And it finally happened. The football gods and the actual God himself looked out for me on that one. But now that we have owners that give us a little bit of hope, it's a very optimistic time for Commander fans. And then with the number 2 pick, they took Jayden Daniels. But here's the thing. This is going to get me in trouble, I know. But this is going to be my Jayden Daniels therapy session where I have to confess that I am having a very hard time getting excited for him. Now, recall, on the second episode of this podcast, I went through why I prefer Drake May over Jayden Daniels. Now, mind you, I was not as informed about either of them as I am sitting here today. So let's recap what I said. What I said at that time was I prefer Drake May. I think he has the higher upside. That's what I believe in. Even if I think his floor might be lower, he has a higher upside. That's what I believe in, especially high in the draft with the number 2 pick. You want a guy that's going to be able to carry your franchise, right? And I don't know if I saw that potential in Jayden Daniels. I definitely saw it in Drake May from what I knew at the time. I wasn't like diving deep into the film or nothing. I saw some highlights. I saw the scouting reports on like generally what their strengths and weaknesses were, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, okay, I look at Drake May. That sounds like a guy that could, if he hits, he could be like a Josh Allen or Justin Herbert type. And then Jayden Daniels, I know they saying Lamar Jackson, but doesn't really seem like it, especially from when I actually watch his highlights. It's not giving Lamar Jackson. It's looking more like a Jalen Hurts maybe, but he's skinny. Like, maybe it's more like that. But my ultimate conclusion at the time was I want Drake May, but if Jayden Daniels is the pick, I won't be upset. I'll be fine with it. Well, now I'm not as fine with it. And you're like, well, Brandon, why? Why is it that all of a sudden you're more down on Jayden Daniels than you were about a month or so ago? Well, I actually went through it and watched every single throw and run that Jayden Daniels had in 2023. And the more I watched, the more I was like, this doesn't look like a number two pick to me. But I'll actually break down each aspect of it. Give me 1 second. You going silent. But yeah, let's break down each aspect. So I have a whole bullet list here of stuff, obviously. Here's one that I think is weird to me that nobody talks about that much with him, but they do with the two other guys that got drafted in the first round, which, by the way, six quarterbacks going in the top 12 is insane. Like, I will go out on a limb right now and say this. At least a minimum of three of those quarterbacks will not be starting for their teams 5 years from now. And in fact, really, I want to say at least four of them will not be starting for their teams. Now, which four, you can decide for yourself. I have my ideas, but um, yeah, that's crazy. The quarterback tax in the NFL is very real, and at some point there has to be a market correction. You got a lot of guys that should be second and third rounders getting drafted in the top 12. It's wild stuff. But getting to Jayden, we're only going to focus on Jayden here because Commander stuff. He's a super senior, just like Michael Penix and Bo Nix are, but except he doesn't get that same label that they do. But Jayden Daniels started at Arizona State in 2019. 2019. That's right. And the COVID year messed everything up in terms of the timeline. Normally, in a normal timeline, Jayden Daniels would have been in the draft a year ago. And if he was in the draft a year ago, Adam Peters himself, he asked Adam Peters where he would get drafted last year, and he said, nah, like the fifth round. Like he would have been like a day 3 pick. And I thinking, well, Brandon, maybe they just misevaluated him, and then they found out this year, no, he's actually really good. Well, about that. So, their track record on guys who aren't really elite prospects until their last year in school, it's not very good, guys. Basically, the only real good examples you have, and even one of these is not actually a good one, because how his career turned out. You have Joe Burrow, who easy explanation for Joe Burrow, because everybody's gonna be like, well, Joe Burrow, was in school for a long time, and it worked out for him. Well, Joe Burrow didn't get to play until you know later on when he transferred to LSU, and then before his senior year breakout, where he put up a bajillion touchdowns and whatever, uh, he had only 1 year starting before that, right? Compare that to Jayden Daniels, who had 3 full years as a starter, plus a few extra games in the COVID year, right? So Jayden Daniels had a long time to distinguish himself, and he didn't do it until, like I said, last year. And people look at that as like, well, oh yeah, he just keeps getting better and better. It's like, or it could be, hey, you take a long time to adjust to a new level. You could look at it that way as well. But the other example is RG3. And RG3, that's an easy explanation with him. And by the way, his career didn't turn out great in part due to this. But the explanation with him is he tore his ACL his sophomore year. Junior year, you could say he's adjusting back. And then you had the senior year breakout, number 2 pick, rookie of the year. And we don't need to talk about what happened after that. But yes, the lesson here is beware, which actually transitions to the next point. Beware of guys who, or rather, no, I'm about to twist this up. Let me correct myself. Because I was about to say beware of guys who break out in their last season Yes, that is one of the lessons. But the real lesson here is beware of judging guys solely on their final season. Here's some names for. Well, first, before I get into the names, they're from what I've seen over the years and doing some precursory research. Precursory, whatever the word is. I'm trying to be all Joe College over here. But basically, the gist of this is looking at a guy's last year in school is no more predictive. In fact, it's less predictive than looking at their entire career. So you need to, if you want to get the most accurate picture of a quarterback prospect, look at their entire college career, not just their best year, not just the last year. You need to look at the whole thing. So with Jayden, when you look at him through that lens, it obviously doesn't look nearly as exciting, right? And then here's some names for you: Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, C.J. Stroud, Josh Allen. Those are just four, but those are four quarterbacks that a lot of people would have as some of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. What do they all have in common? Well, all of them arguably, if not for sure, did not have their best college seasons the year before they declared for the draft. As we know, Lamar Jackson won the Heisman in his sophomore season. Justin Herbert, who was in college for 4 years, you want to know what his best season was? When he was a sophomore. C.J. Stroud, you could argue his best season was as a sophomore. Josh Allen, you could argue his best season was as a sophomore. The thing is, in this current climate in the NFL with the rookie wage scale, since then, if you are that dude, if you really are that dude, you're not staying in school for 5 years, bro. You're just not. You coming out. You're gonna be too good. Like one of the biggest penalties for, well, Caleb Williams, it didn't matter because he still went number one. But with Drake May, who got picked apart, he didn't stay in school that long. He only had 2 years as a starter because he's too good to stay in school. Like, if you're Drake May, what are you going back to school for? North Carolina ain't winning no championship, and you're going to be a top 3 pick at worst. Why would you stay in school? You're too damn good. Whereas Jayden wasn't that until this year, where he's got a boatload of experience and he's seen everything already. But another key thing with Jayden in terms of his last season and why you have to maybe have a little bit of trepidation here. Per Pro Football Focus, now hitting you with a little bit of analytics maybe, but really this is just simple stuff. 17% of his career runs were breakaways. Now this actually though, this gets into the idea of Jayden Daniels being like a big play threat waiting to happen. Because basically this was only true last year, where he had like 90 plays of 20 plus yards, which I think is like a NCAA record or something. Which, yeah, that's really good stuff. If that's the real Jayden Daniels, fantastic. We cooking, right? But there's reason to be skeptical that it is because, like I said, 17% of his career runs, going back to Arizona State and his 2 years at LSU, were breakaways, meaning 15 yards or more, which means the ability to make your runs big plays. For reference, if you're wondering, for context, Lamar Jackson, who everyone likes to compare him to, his was 42%. What the god damn? 42. That is insane. Lamar Jackson is just, when you talk about the best running quarterbacks in the history of football, it's Lamar Jackson, and then there's everybody else. Okay, he's on a different playing field. He has no peer. And then Jalen Hurts, you wouldn't think this. Jalen Hurts was 30%. Who, by the way, that's the optimistic compliment for Jalen. We'll get to that later. But yeah, so like he, at least for most of his career, he was not like this. He was a good scrambler, good runner, but like it wasn't like crazy until really last year. I mean, he also had a lot of yards in 2022 as well. But again, overall for his career, we're not talking about a guy who consistently turned his runs into big plays. That's really more this year, which could be explained by the offensive line and receivers taking the attention away from the defense. But we'll get to that. Because actually, the next thing from watching him, this is from watching him, me. Now, I'm not some pro scout or anything, but this is my impression. The biggest thing that jumped out to me when I watched him, the pocket presence. To me, it was really bad. It was really, really bad. Like, and I think one reason why people don't see it that way is because his offensive line was so good. They gave him so many clean pockets that every time he threw the ball, it's from a nice clean pocket where he could get his feet underneath him. Yeah, your mechanics are going to look amazing when you can throw from a perfect platform. But buddy, that's not the NFL, and it's definitely not going to be the case in Washington. At least not early. They'll need some time to get to that. Um, and also, like I said, the receivers, running, having a step or two. Somebody's open on every play. But the thing I saw too was he seemed to get skittish to me, and like the moment pressure would get to him, his eyes would drop, and he'd be figuring out how to get out of there, and like, he would take off a lot. And both my watching him and the numbers bear this out. So, scrambled at a comically high rate, like way more than like even someone like Lamar, who's the greatest scrambler of all time, and he scrambled more than him by a lot, even more than like Justin Fields. The only other one that's in his league for recently drafted QBs is like Trey Lance, and yeah, you don't want to be compared with Trey Lance or Justin Fields for that matter. But I know some people still believe in Justin Fields. Y'all have fun with that. But yeah, it makes me skeptical that he's like this super elite passer because, another thing that I got told was, oh yeah, he's a better passer than Lamar, and I'm like, when I watch him, like, yeah, I'm not seeing that. Like, he definitely has really good accuracy from what I saw, though his short accuracy I think is actually a little questionable. But to the intermediate and deep parts of the field, at least last year. Now his career's deep numbers were bad, but for last year they were really good. Obviously, we know that was like the big selling point, right? But he's accurate down the field. I'll give him that. But when it comes to throwing off platform, throwing on the move, he just didn't really do it that much. And just to give you an actual number for that, which gets to now the thing that really bothered me was as well, and I actually mentioned this in the other pod, is the lack of creativity. He does create to run in the scramble, but rarely does he create to throw. So he only threw when moved off his spot. So meaning you're in the pocket, the pressure comes, and you have to move and either reset or throw on the move or whatever, right? This is like creativity. This is what the Mahomes and the Josh Allens and the Lamars, this is how they make their hay, right? He only did that 20% of the time. 20%. Last in the FBS and last by a mile of the guys who were drafted this year. He just does not create to throw. And that's something that the elite guys do that, at least in college, he didn't show. He didn't show that. Not nearly enough. And like I said, all the current elites do this. And again, that lack of creativity, that could really be a problem early in his career with the current roster that the Commanders have, where we could have the worst offensive line in the league. And so he's going to get moved off his spot a lot, an awful lot. And so that's something he's going to have to work on. Or at least if he's not going to be creative in that way, he's going to have to be really, really, really good in the quick game in a way that I'm not sure he totally was at LSU, because he also seemed a beat slow. Like, his processing from what I saw, and again, I'm not no scout, so take it with a grain of salt. But from what I saw, he would get to the right answer often, but it's sometimes it's like a bit slow. Like just where in the NFL it's like that little tick of a second could be all the difference, right? And I think the last thing I want to say on just this part of it is he's a very conservative passer for his career and even last year. Very conservative. Throws short a lot, doesn't attack the middle of the field often, doesn't attack down the field as often as you would think, despite the deep ball numbers. Yeah, when he throws down the field, money, but he didn't do it a lot. And that's why I'm going to have a comparison for him later that might make some of you recoil. But we'll get to that. The other big concern, obviously, that everyone has, or at least if you're reasonable, probably, is the size. Now, call me a conspiracy theorist, but I don't believe he's going to be playing at 210 pounds. I don't believe that. Maybe he is, but I'm guessing it's more like 200 to 205, which is very light, and the successive quarterbacks that light is very spotty. Basically, for recent history, meaning like the last 20 years, it's basically Kirk Cousins, and that's about it. Particularly at that height, particularly, it's that's about all you got. So, and yes, there's injury concerns, particularly with how reckless he plays. God, he thinks he's Wolverine the way that he runs. Like, I thought they were maybe sizing it a little bit, but when I'm like, oh no, that part of it, he lived up to that. That man, I was like, man, this man's bones must be made of vibranium, bro. Like, god dang. Like the hits that some of the hits he takes, and like it's consistent. Like it's like he's trying to prove how tough he is, and that's definitely gonna have to fix itself. He will not last in the league going like that. Um, and that also could make him very easy to bring down. Obviously, he's going to be a sack merchant. He's going to get sacked a lot. That's just something that usually guys who struggle with sacks in college, they always struggle in the NFL. Always. Like you can almost just pretty much take it to the bank. He's going to struggle with sacks, so he has to overcome that. Um, so those are probably my big concerns. Now, is there hope? I have a little bit of hope. Maybe not that he's a superstar, but at least that he could be someone that you can win with. I don't know if he can be the reason you win, even in the best case scenario, but at least he's not going to stop you from winning. The legs and accuracy give a good floor, in theory. Especially, particularly if the accuracy does translate, it gives a good floor. Like I said, I think the best case scenarios is probably like a skinny Jalen Hurts. Like, what does that look like exactly? I don't know. But Adam Peters, the GM that drafted him, comes from San Francisco, where they actually weren't very good at evaluating quarterbacks. This is the front that they gave up 3 first round picks for Trey Lance. But what they did do was they put their quarterbacks in the best position to succeed. Now, we don't have a Shanahan here. We got Cliff Kingsbury, which I'm not a fan of that, but hey, it's what we got. All right. So, yeah, the other realistic case that we have for Jayden Daniels is, and this will make some of you recoil, think fast Alex Smith. Alex Smith, if he ran like Colin Kaepernick, because of how conservative he is with the ball, which, by the way, he's very good at not turning it over with, even in the context of how little he throws the ball down the field, it's still very impressive how he almost never puts the ball in harm's way. That part also translates. Then that also gives a okay floor for him, right? So, yeah. But hopefully, like in San Fran, they put the right pieces around him. You know, strong offensive line. We got playmakers at receiver, particularly Terry McLaurin, one of the best in the league. If they can do that over the next couple years, then there is hope that it'll all work out. But like I said, unless he becomes a far more creative passer, I don't see the really high upside where he's carrying the franchise, even in unideal situations. And, even though I think it could still work out, I hate how confident I am in this opinion. But we'll see. We'll see, though. What we also going to see is what them summer bodies looking like out there. That's right. You watching this. What you looking like for the summer? Because my cut is going pretty well right now. I done lost 8 pounds in the last 3 weeks. Granted, get a chunk of that as water, but even in that context, it's still going pretty good. But for those of you out here who might be struggling to get your summer body for the 15th year in a row, I'm here to provide some hope, but also some realistic expectations for you. So, you might have a realistic goal. A lot of you men out there, you just want a flat stomach, not the man tits, to be able to see your bicep and tricep and shoulders, and instead of it looking like just one big sausage link, you know what I'm saying? If you're a lady, you might be, a 33-year-old mom who just wants her 23-year-old body back. That's realistic. That's not anything crazy. And I know that diet culture is supposed to be toxic and unhealthy and all of that, but for most of you, you don't have the unrealistic goals of the internet. You just want some very normal stuff. But what might not be realistic is the timeline in which you're trying to achieve it. So let's say you're a male and you're 30% body fat, which means, like I said, sausage link arm, ain't no veins, ain't no bicep, tricep, shoulders. It's just one big blob. You got some man tits, nice little pudge on you. Not even protruding per se big. In clothes, you might actually look kind of normal, but you know, you're 30%, so which is obese. In order to get to a straight flat stomach, with a little bit of definition on you, to get from 30%, which is probably 20% for that goal, 20% body fat, that's probably 30 pounds you gotta lose. So you're like 5'10, 225, 30%. You probably gotta get down to like 190 to 195. You gonna do that in 3 months? Probably not. So if you have more than 20 pounds to lose, you probably have to play the long game in terms of getting to your body goals. But that gets to the real issue at hand, because the truth is, a lot of people will lose a significant amount of weight at some point in their life, but they also will gain most, not all of it back. Because the real game changer, yes, losing weight is hard, but if you manage to do that, then most people rebound. The real skill that is life changing is the ability to maintain the body. You get your body in good spot, you can maintain it. It's a different skill to be able to lose the weight versus maintaining your newfound leanness. Because the thing is, when you're maintaining, you can't be as strict as you were on the diet, because that's not sustainable. It doesn't need to be sustainable. I used to say that all the time. Oh, if you on a diet, then you need to choose a diet that you can maintain for the rest of your life. That's not totally true. You're not going to eat like that forever, because, again, you're in a deficit. So by definition, it's not sustainable. And also, generally, that's another place where I've changed my mind. I used to say, oh, it's better to lose the weight slow. It's better to lose the weight as quickly as you can handle. Because, again, dieting is not ideal in any circumstance. So the sooner you can get it done, the better. But there's a catch to that. And that catch is that if you have a lot of weight to lose, you might not want to lose it all in one swoop. Here's a strategy for you. If you have 30 pounds to lose, maybe you just lose 10 pounds at a time, maybe even 5 pounds at a time. And then you take a break and you try to learn how to maintain. And that's where you start to gain the skills of how to maintain once all that weight is gone. And then, hey, Ladies, you could have that 23-year-old body into your 40s and 50s. I mean, obviously, there's other aging stuff, but you could be as close to it as, is feasible for you because you've gained those skills along the way to where because you was able to build those skills of maintenance where you're not as strict as you're on a diet, but you also can't eat like you used to when you were your bigger self. You find that happy medium straddling that balance, that fence that allows you to stay in that lean state and in a healthy state. And that's what we all want, right? So the benefits of that strategy is you alleviate diet fatigue and you learn those skills that's going to keep you lean once you get there. But yeah, embrace the long game for your forever body goals. And we're going to close this out with our Montyism of the day, which is building self esteem. Now, shout out to this lady called Sadia Khan Psychology on YouTube, where she talks about the key to self-esteem, which she says for women it's authenticity. So staying true to yourself. That's how women build their self-esteem, regardless of what the world throws at you, what the world tells you to do, what's going on around you. You always stay true to who you are and what you feel is your true identity, and you don't compromise that for anyone. But then I'm gonna really get into the men's side of it, which is self control. Self control is the key to the man's self esteem. And I can say this personally that it works. So, self control, how do we practice that? So, like, for example, a lot of times men's self esteem gets a bigger boost from rejecting the woman than actually having sex with her. Crazy, I know, right? But it's like having that, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to stay true to my purpose and what I need to do. That is going to help build that self esteem up. So, what are some practical things you could do? Well, the big thing I'm going to leave you with today is practice keeping promises to yourself. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. When you say, today, I'm going to clean the bathroom, you clean that bathroom. You say, I'm going to study for this security certification, you study for that job. You say, I'm going to take my girl to the movies, even, I've been putting off taking her to some big dinner, whatever it is. You do what you said you're going to do. If you want to keep your promises to the people around you, your girl, your kids, your parents, your colleagues at work, your business, whatever, you got to start with yourself. So keep your promises to yourself. You can start small, just one little small thing a day that you say you're going to do. You just do it. And eventually, maybe you build those habits of staying true to what you said you was going to do and to become second nature. And you build that confidence because competence breeds confidence. So remember that. And that'll be the show for today. So shouts out to Greenhouse as usual, but also shout out to Projects and Bunch. Happy birthday to both of them. Y'all my boys. And like, subscribe, hit that bell button. And that's it. That's all. See y'all next time.